You're listening to the Tony Steuer Podcast, where Tony interviews financial literacy advocates who are changing the conversation on money, so you can catch up on the latest trends and ideas in the world of financial literacy and education. Presented by Paperwork. Be prepared for life.
Welcome to the Tony Steuer Podcast presented by Paperwork. I'm pleased to be joined today by Thomas Kopelman. Thomas is a financial planner and the co-founder of AllStreet Wealth, as well as a blogger, podcaster, and speaker. Thomas was recognized as one of the 23 best financial advisors for millennials by Business Insider. Thomas, welcome to the Tony Steuer Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you as well. So as we jump in, can you share with us about, what is your origin story? How did you get started in financial services?
Yeah, so I guess mine's probably similar, but a little different. Like growing up, my whole life was centered around basketball. I was like really good at basketball, was going to go play, had D1, D2 offers, ended up going to like the best D2 school I could go to because they were overall the best basketball program. My goal was always, I'm going to play 4 years there, probably go play overseas. Ended up getting hurt my freshman year and realizing like, I don't love it the same way I used to. So I was kind of like, I transferred to Butler University in Indianapolis, had no idea what I wanted to do. I worked at Eli Lilly, to consulting firms, to insurance firms, to a tech startup. And really like all of them, I just didn't find a lot of meaning in it. Like in basketball, you feel your impact, like your hard work is seen. The way that you play has an impact on your team, which has an impact on the goal that you're trying to achieve. And I think I really was looking for a job that had something similar to that. And so it kind of fell in my lap. I ended up working at a broker dealer right out of college. Didn't know too much about financial planning other than like, hey, my life was significantly impacted by the fact that my grandma did really well financially, she did great investing with a financial advisor, and that led to a great life for my family. That's all I really knew. And so I started there and I realized real quick, like, hey, I want to work with millennials. Millennials need financial help, but where I'm at is not allowing me to do that. Like having focus on products first and insurances and selling mutual funds, like that is just not the way to work with young people. Young people don't need products, they need advice. Sometimes those products come into play, but everything starts and leads with a financial plan and advice. And I didn't really have a good way to charge on that. I had no way to market because it was go to weddings, go to networking events, go to all these things and come back with leads. And I was like, if financial planning is so important, then why do I need to sell? Why can't I attract? And so my whole thought was I'm going to leave and I'm going to go somewhere that's going to help teach me how to attract people. And, I had a bunch of offers when I was getting ready to leave, ended up taking the lowest paying offer, but the best opportunity. So, maybe people here know his name's Justin Costelli. He's like the third ranked financial advisor by Investopedia. He believed all the same things I believed, like grow through content, educate people, attract, build a business by having great service and just being good to people. And never trying to sell them on why you need him, but just, hey, here's what I do. Here's how I help. If that's right for you, come work with us. And I just loved that approach. So I got to work with Justin for a little over a year. And he was kind of at the point, he's like, hey, I don't feel like you're getting too much from me at this point. I think you're ready to go launch your own firm. And so officially launched my own firm in September of last year with my partner, Trayton DeVore. And really like with Justin, it was great, but I built my brand, but the firm brand was different than my brand. And so now I was able to build a firm that's all centered around helping people in our generation accomplish their financial goals. And so typically who we work with is late 20s to early 40s, high variable income, business owners / creators, equity comp, and people with crypto. Like, I know that sounds like a lot, but a lot of those things go hand in hand. Like young business owners, a ton of them are already involved with crypto and they have variable income. And then there's like people with equity comp are also most of the time interested in crypto. So we're like, what are the things that pain points they have, things they want to know about? And how can we learn and master those things to help people where they're at in life?
Well, fantastic. Yeah, a lot in there to unpack. That's all fantastic stuff. I think, one, I'd love to talk a little bit more about basketball. I play basketball and I've been talking a lot about the application of basketball to financial literacy, with skills coaching, practice, that's required to actually be effective. But I think what you said, I think is really important is, that you're leading with the need rather than the product. And I think that's so important, is to be able to flip that conversation. Are people really, is that resonating with your clients?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think a lot of my clients came from places where they were sold products to, or, hey, I started to work with my parents' financial advisor and all they wanted to talk about is the one investment account I have. Cause like for me, all my clients are at different stages. Like I just had a new client who she has a decent amount of credit card debt and other debt. And for the first probably 2 years of working together, all we're going to do is be attacking different debts. What is the order? How do we at the same time build some of your emergency fund? Do we do your 401k if it doesn't have a match? Those type of things. And then I have other clients who are business owners, in their 30s, and we're spending so much time on cash flow in the business and how to grow their income through the business, those type of things. And I have other people who are like, hey, we have, the main focus is we don't have a ton of extra income. We're in our ESPP plan. How much do we hold on to? What do we sell? How do we use that to fund our goals? And so everybody has different goals and they have different things they're trying to accomplish. My job is, what role do you need me to serve? How do I help you accomplish those goals? Some people are more foundational. Some people are more into investment. Some are more into life planning. I just want to help people accomplish their goals. And that's why we have kind of that fee structure of pay us monthly. It's like a yearly fixed cost of working with us. Is I'm aligned to help you accomplish all your financial goals. If I'm not helping you do that, you're going to leave me, versus the AUM advisor or the insurance product advisors. Like, you really only are required to help on those things because of what you're paid on. And they're probably not going to leave you because you're helping, their investments are still doing well. But it leaves, for young people, that like investments are such a small piece of everything that's going on. And it leaves so much room or so much feelings of like, wow, I'm not getting everything I need from this person. So eventually they end up leaving to find somebody who's going to help them accomplish what is important to them, not just manage the investment account that they have.
Well, that's great. And excuse me, with that fee model, it's almost, more like you are a paid advisor to that client, in a true sense of the word advisor, rather than just a investment manager, which is super important, and managing assets, and but that's a facet of what I think a financial planner should be, is that they do that, but they're really helping their clients solve problems in their financial life and navigate so many different things. That's great stuff.
I was just going to say, like, I think what's important to us and important to young people is like, we collaborate with them. We don't tell them what to do. I think a lot of financial advisors, like, I think they are, like they're their dad, like, hey, here's what you have to do, go do it. But that doesn't work with young people. You're not going to be like, hey, you have 30% of your net worth in Bitcoin, and somebody's going to say, go sell it. You're not going to go sell it. You're going to leave that advisor. And so what my job is help them view it without any emotion. So, hey, here's the risks of what you're doing. Great. Here's also the upside of what you're doing. Hey, what could really help is if we build out a diversified portfolio. If we're maxing out these other accounts, will ultimately allow you to hold on to more here, because all of your other goals are accomplished by what you're doing. This is kind of that gravy on the top. And the better you do over here, then the more risk that you can take on another side. And so helping them view through like, maybe crypto or equity comp, help them just take the situation, view the information, why this route could be better than the other, but then ultimately know that they might pick that other route, and that's okay because that's what they feel is the best choice for them. I just want to empower them to make the decision that's best for them with all the information in front of them.
Well, that's great. And I think that's a wonderful approach. And I think, that's so different is, with the cryptos, instead of giving that client the advice to get rid of something that they really like for whatever reason, is that you're working to help them figure out how that fits in with the rest of their financial life, rather than giving them advice. I mean, that's why I feel people don't stick with budgets, is because, you're asking them to make these changes that they don't really want to make, that you have to help them figure out how to.
And budgeting is a great example of like, I don't lead with budgeting. We start with, hey, what's your surplus based on revenue or income minus expenses? What are your goals? Does that put you on track for your goals? If not, you have two options: cut spending or scale back your goals. I don't care what you choose. It's your life, but you have to make that choice. And if you just lead with, hey, you need to cut this money and you need to invest more, but there's no meaning behind that, you're never going to end up helping people do that. And so, I had a client this week that I'm working with of, hey, here are some of these goals you have. We looked at his spending and he's like, oh, I could cut here, here, and here so I could free up money so that would put me more on track to hit my down payment of my house in 2 years. That is more meaningful to them because they're getting to what they want. If you don't know what they want, but you tell them what to do, they're never going to take that action because it doesn't feel like anything important to them.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff. And, the other thing I did want to come back to it, I think you're really putting into practice the old adage, that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and that you're listening to your clients rather than just talking at them. And I think that's great advice. And it also applies, I think, to advisors who've been in the business for a long time. And even with more mature clients I know when I was, the predominance of my career was as a life insurance consultant, is that oftentimes, it would puzzle me why somebody would keep a whole life policy that really didn't have a place in their overall portfolio. But instead of continuing to nag at them to get rid of that policy is, okay, well, how do we position it so that you're still meeting your goals and not draining all your cash to pay the premiums? And I think that's, a lesson everybody can take to heart.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it was Carl Richards who talks about this, but my thing is I just keep asking why, because what I've realized is that everybody has surface level goals. Hey, if I say, hey, what are your goals? They're going to say, I want to get married. I want to have kids. I want to have a house. I want to pay for their education. I want to retire. It's great. You just said the 5 goals that every single other person I've ever talked to has said. Let's dig deep. What does that look like for a house? Why do you want a house? Why so quick? Or, do you feel like that would be, you just keep asking why? And a lot of times you get them to the point of wait, that actually isn't a goal of mine. I don't actually want to own a house. I don't want to take care of a house right now. I'm single. I just been told that it was a good investment. Okay, well, actually it's a fine investment. It's not a good investment. So how about I, help you look at this clearly versus, all these myths and biases that people have told you your whole life. So that way you can choose whether you actually want it. Because buying a house because it's a good investment is not the right idea. Buying a house because you want to build a life with your family, stay somewhere, not have to move, better choice. But if you can't just go do all of these other things, you're hey, I want to pay for my kids' education through a 529 plan. Okay, why? Well, the tax benefit. Okay, do you realize in the state that you have, there's no tax deduction or tax credit for it? Okay, great. Well, what do you think college looks like in 25 years? Well, I don't know. I think it's going to change. Probably won't be as expensive. Maybe not as needed. Okay, great. So maybe we don't want to be end up with $200,000 in a 529 plan after you know this. But until you really peel back the onion and help people take their own thoughts and refine them, you can't really come up with an action plan or a course of which way to take.
That's great. And actually that reminds me of some negotiating courses that I took. I don't know why I took some negotiating courses years ago, but that's one of the things is, that was one of the main points. You can't really change someone else's mind. You have to educate them to the point where they decide whether or not they make a change. And it sounds like that's what you're really doing, is helping people come to that decision on their own to do something rather than, again, just trying to prove out that they need to do something.
Yeah, you can't force anybody to change unless they have the want to change. I think that's definitely something I've learned over the years.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff. So, let's talk a little bit about the Long Game blog, which is how, we connected. Is, what inspired you to start the Long Game blog?
So when I joined Justin, our thought was day one, I'm launching with a blog. If I'm going to grow, a blog is probably the best way to do it. Because I think you can grow anyway. You could grow without a blog and just post on social, but a blog is a really great way to have longer form content. You can cut it up and create more content out of it. It's a way for people to, hey, every Wednesday, I know Thomas has a blog. And I took forever trying to come up with the name. I had hundreds of names and I wanted to do something with sports. But then I was just man, if I'm working with young people, the long game, viewing your finances as a long game is really one of the best sound approaches. Everything we talk about with people always can be the long game. It can always come back to it. But I just knew for me, the way to grow was to attract the people who need financial help. The way to do that is through content education. That was my biggest belief. I'm never calling a friend. I'm never asking somebody to work with me. I don't do anything other than people find me online and reach out and book a meeting. That was my whole goal. And my first company told me that would never happen. That's not the way to grow. It's never been the way to grow. And I was it's 2020. Are you good? Or we're almost in 2020. If you're trying to tell me that people aren't trying to find their financial advisor online, you're wrong. And so I started there, worked on the blog, And the piece of advice I give to every advisor is like, stop thinking that you're going to start an RIA or go be an advisor. You're going to launch a blog, podcast, newsletter, post on 3 social media platforms all right away, because all you're going to do by doing that is be extremely average at all of them. What you need to do is find the one that you're going to like the most and perfect it. Like, get as good as you can at it. Once you feel confident, you've sped up the time it takes to do it, then you move and add in a new form. So for me, it was blog for the first few months. Then I added the podcast, did that for a few months, added the newsletter, did that for a few months, started to add some video, did that for a few months. Now I expand and post more often, more on Twitter, et cetera. And I just keep building it out and refining the way that I do it and just try to meet people where they're at. Because I always use this analogy of financial planning is not like I'm a consumer brand that sells like, this t-shirt. Like Justin sells this t-shirt. Somebody might see that on Twitter, be like, that's sweet, I'm going to go buy it. Great. People don't just see your post on social and say, hey, Thomas, hey, that was a good point, I'm gonna go work with him. They don't. What they do is they see me continue educating them, educate. And then a year later, they hit a pain point about something I already wrote about or talked about. And they're like, oh, wait, I do need help on that. I remember Thomas talked about that a few times last year. He probably can help me. I'm going to reach out to him. And that's been my goal, because think about everybody else. The only other advisors they really know in their life have been hounding them to sell them insurance or try to put them into some, investments they have. I take the approach of all I'm doing is giving away tons of information for free. So that way you get educated. The DIYers of the world are never going to work with me anyway. So I'm adding value to them. And the people who want help are just waiting to get to the point where they truly need that help. And they're going to reach out to the person who's never asked for anything from them before.
Well, and as well as it's educating them, because it shows that your heart is about education rather than sales. And
True.
I think that's important. The other thing that I think that you said is super important is, to not try to tackle all these different avenues all at once. Is, the typical advisor, they don't have massive free time. They may not have the experience across all these different channels, and each of these channels does require specific skills. So I think that's really sound advice, because that's what people do is, they get started, they try to post Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and then they kind of discontinue after a while because it's challenging to keep up with it.
Yeah, I would say that happens a lot. So what I always recommend is like, pick the one, not the one that you think it's going to work the best, but the one that you're going to like the best, because content is a long form thing. It takes a while before you start to get any results out of it. And so if you're writing and you hate writing, well, in 4 months, you're just going to burn out because you haven't seen any results, because it takes longer than that. So I think start with something that you like, do there, and then expand past that. And I think you'll be in a good spot.
Well, that's great advice. So as we move through is, one of the things you mentioned is about how people can move beyond their surface level goals, that they think they want, to determine the lives that they truly want. What do you mean by that? And how can people do that?
Yeah. So I think, one example is we always ask why was we go beyond the goals, but we use Kinder's 3 questions as well. So like our process fully automated, like after our clients sign on as clients, in between the first meeting and the second meeting, about 5 days before, they get a video from us that walks through what the Kinder's 3 questions are and ask them to brainstorm these ideas if they're single by themselves, with their spouse. And so that way, when we come into the meeting, we can really start to think about like what matters to you. Like if you had unlimited money, how would you change your life? That's a pretty easy one. If you had limited time, you only have 5 years left to live, how would you change your life? Okay, today's your last day. It's not what do you regret? Or it's just like, what did you not get to do? Who did you not get to become? What did you wish was different about your life? And you find themes in there. Some of the themes from people are like, man, I would really switch jobs and I'd work in this industry, or I'd spend more time with my family, or whatever. It's like, you just realize that everything you talked about was spending more time with your family. Like, why aren't you doing that today? You're like, well, because of work and this. You're like, you never once answered anything that was about, I want to have the most money as possible. Not one thing that you ever said was, I need max amount of money. So then 2 years down the line, when they come to me and say, hey, I live in Indiana, I just got a job offer in California, double the income, I think I'm going to take it. I can hold them accountable, say, hey, wait, your values have nothing to do with maximizing income. You make a good amount of money, and you said your regrets would be not spending time with your family, and you're going to move across the country to be far from your family. Like, do you see how those don't go hand in hand? And so like, I can help people make sure that the decisions that they're making and the things that they're doing are aligned with who they are, who they want to become. and the life that they truly want to live. And I think that's an important part of being a financial advisor is, money's goal is to take you from point A to point B, but we have to know what point B is. We don't need to have, it's great to have more money, but do you really want to have significantly more money if it takes you away from getting to point B? Probably not. It's great to have extra money in your bank account, but not if you're not able to be and do what you want to do.
That's so interesting. So just this morning, I was reading an article by a personal finance person that I follow, and she was talking a little bit about FIRE. And, she goes, I'm going to, I decided to start FIRE, 6 months ago, and I thought I was going to work over the next 7 years, 60 hours a week. And, and what you said started resonating with me because it's like, she said after 6 months, she goes, I don't want to work 60 hours a week, because I'm giving up,
100%. I think that's I have people who are going for FIRE and want to retire early, and that's great. But I think FIRE is good if you don't have to give up everything now. For me, I know my life is simple. I live in a nice apartment. I don't really shop a whole lot. I spend frivolously on dates with my girlfriend and we go on nice vacations, but I can live off of 50% of what I make. And so for me, FIRE could be really realistic at an early age, but I don't feel like I'm giving up anything because I have a pretty solid income. If I was at a point where I was I can't go on nice dates, I don't get to travel every year, it wouldn't be worth striving to be able to save all those extra dollars because it is true. You only have one life. Everybody who's in their 40s and 50s is biggest piece of advice is really enjoy your 20s before you have kids and before you do these things. And then there's all these other people that are giving up all of their 20s so that they can have their 60s. And it's I guess your 60s could be great, but for one, that's not guaranteed. If you retire in your 40s, none of your friends are probably retired and going to be traveling with you all the time and hang out with you during the day. It's do you you don't want to have to give up today for that. If you can still live today and get there, great. If you have to give up a little bit, great. But if you have to give up everything to just hopefully one day be able to retire early and then for 50 years do nothing, if you look at people in retirement, the people who have nothing are typically the people in the worst health because you need something that excites you. And I think work optional is a great goal. I love helping my clients. I want to do the same thing for me. My goal is by 40, I'm work optional. I will 100% work. I love working. I literally would do this job my whole life. I love everything about it. But it is still freeing to know that you don't have to have to make choices based on money. I get that. You just don't want to give up everything for that.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is to find some balance in what you're doing is, there are certain things you can do in your 20s and 30s, that you can't do. I was into whitewater rafting when I was in my 20s and 30s, but, I'm approaching 60 and there's no way I could keep up that kind of, schedule on the weekends, doing all those outdoor activities. It's just not reasonable at my age.
Yeah, it's totally fair. Totally fair.
So that's great advice. So, as we wrap up, what's your number one tip on financial wellness?
Number one tip on financial wellness, I think for young people, it's to automate your finances. I think we're young, we love technology, we believe in technology, but yet most people leave their finances up to themselves of hey, I get $7,000 of an income a month, I'm going to spend whatever. And then at the end of the month, whatever's left, I'm going to save or pay off debt or invest. And it's research proves that you're always going to spend more by seeing more. And so what I help people do is, hey, you have $7,000 a month, your expenses are $5,000. Well, we're going to automate $2,000 a month out every single month. And then your job is pretty easy. I see $5,000 in here. My goal is to spend it. So you don't even have to budget. It doesn't have to be $400 on groceries and $300 on dining out and $200 on clothes. Your goal is that your variable spending is similar every month. You learn that over time because you become aware of it. All my clients eventually become aware of it and do a really good job. But there's that's freeing because now you're not budgeting and you're not only restricted to spending X amount of dollars on X amount of things. Your months can change. And one month you would rather go travel on a nice weekend. Another month you would rather, buy new clothes. And that's fine because you have those free dollars. So I just think automating your finances is the key to really accomplishing the financial goals and not letting your human behavior take part in you mess up, overspend, don't save, and then you find yourself making little to no progress because you didn't just take that one extra step.
That's great. That's wonderful advice. So Thomas, and I will post links to your website. where can people learn about you? Where's the best place? Is it LinkedIn? Is it your website?
Yeah, so I'll give you a few. So allstreetwealth.com is a pretty good place. Like everything about who we are, who we serve, what our fee structure is, what the process is, everything like that's great. ThomasKopelman.com is where I wrote all my blogs. So if you're just kind of wanting to read and learn, I think I put out a lot of great blogs. I think I've done like 104 straight or something, like over 2 years of one a week. Twitter is probably the most fun place to follow me. Like that's where I probably post like 7 to 10 times a day, ton of really great stuff. LinkedIn, which my Twitter is T Kopelman. I'm on LinkedIn at Thomas Kopelman. I like LinkedIn. I post every single day. It's good. I just think it's way less engaging and a little bit more fake than Twitter, which is why Twitter is definitely my number one. And then I have, a couple great newsletters, and you can find both of those from those websites.
Fantastic. Well, Thomas, thanks again for joining me on the Tony Steuer podcast. It's been a great conversation.
Good. I'm glad that you felt like this was useful, and I had a lot of fun. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And to everybody watching and listening, thank you for tuning in to the Tony Steuer podcast. One quick thing, we talked about FIRE today. That's financial independence, retire early. And I'll put up some links to the concept on that as well. So thanks again for tuning in. Until next time.